So the era of innovation, health and wellness, video, social media, communications, platforms that change the world. Very broad topic. We have some very great talent who's going to take their spin and point of view on that today. The format that we're going to be going through is that we're going to go through a series of introductions where people are going to introduce and sort of give you their take on that topic. We'll then go through and I have a series of questions that I've lined up for the panel. I'm going to ask each one a question. The rest of the panel will join in and sort of converse back and forth. If you can hold your questions until the end, we'll be wrapping up probably around 10 to 15 minutes left, and then we'll go through the room and try to answer your questions. Today's conversation is really about much more of sort of getting to hear different points of view on the key topics on this area. All right, so to move forward, the question that I'm going to ask them to kick off around is, in your opening statement, how do your companies, or why you're here, use innovation in video, social media, and communication to impact health? Right? There's sort of this interesting intersection we're starting to see where health, as I hold up my Fitbit, and I think this was the week in which the iWatch was released, it's starting to be this intersection that health is making a long overdue presence in the world of technology and media, right? The measured self. And there's a lot of ways where this is going to continue to become a more and more important role as those three worlds, technology, media, and health, move and merge together. So my take on this topic was really sort of health and wellness is being changed by the internet media with so many different platforms in so many ways that we're shaping innovation. What's the future going to look like? And so that's what I don't have the answers. I'm just a facilitator, right? But the nice thing is I'd be able to moderate the brains and genius and insights of this fine panel in front of you. I'm going to have them go through. We're going to start from the far end. If you'd like to kick yourself off, the best way for them to introduce themselves is to have them do that. We'll work our way over, and then we have a series of questions. Please hold your questions till the end, and welcome.
Thank you. I'm Patrick Vogt. I'm the CEO, and I restarted Healthy Nation in January of 2014. Healthy Nation is actually a new type of media company. You might have heard the term full stack startup, where you're controlling your own destiny in your entire value chain. And companies like Uber and Facebook and some of these, when they started, had this concept. We originate all of our health and wellness videos on our properties, but it's also a distributed model. And the intersection of technology and programming is really what we're about. So really the original programming, TV quality original programming, and using technology to create a great viewing experience, not only in our environment, but where we distribute our content. I'm probably the only CEO of a media publisher that says, I don't really care about my unique visitors on my site, because we built our entire business model around the video view. And our mission is to help people live healthy and active lifestyles. And if we were, if we have that mission, we can't tell them you can only do it on our sites. So we had to build a model around the video view. We don't really care where the video view happens, whether it happens on mobile devices, across all screens, or even on our publisher strategic partners, whether it's Yahoo, AOL, Scripps Networks, and a whole slew of them where we distribute our content to. We do around 1 million video views per day. And I think, when I talk about the question a bit, our company is only around 1.5 years old with this restart of creating this consumer brand. In the health and wellness industry, it's the DTC portion of it, direct to consumer. And really the mission around helping people live healthy and active lifestyles was a passion of mine back. I'm a longtime TEDster and invested in and sponsored some TED Talks on the main TED campus and brought speakers in to speak on different topics around the food system. So the problem we have today with obesity in this country and in the world is most of the illnesses could be prevented by doing 3 things: eating well, moving, and sleeping. And you can prevent 40% of cancers and 80% of heart disease and stroke in this country, which is around 84% of our healthcare spend. And that's why we're doing what we're doing, because we're trying to educate people to live in this environment where it's really difficult to be healthy with our food system and the environment they have, and educate them, show them how to do it, and then get them doing it with our food and fitness programming.
Thank you.
Hey, good morning. My name is Yahav Isaac. I run operations for Publicis Life Brands. It's a group of under Publicis. There's a whole slew of agencies from the agencies world, a lot of marketing, a lot of digital production in my background. The last 4 years, I've been with both under the Publicis healthcare group, trying to bring innovation, digital innovation into the marketing, both to consumer and to physicians. Utilize a lot of the platforms that are out there to connect with both the patients, caregivers, and the doctors.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Amanda Bass. I'm with a company called Communicorp, which is actually a wholly owned subsidiary of AFLAC. Show of hands, who has heard of the duck? Good.
AFLAC.
Yes, thank you. You know, my background is certainly within marketing, but specifically in the healthcare space, being part of AFLAC for so long, has been, you know, evolving over the years. Obviously, the point of view that we look at is know your audience and understand your audience segmentation. So with millennials becoming the target audience for a lot of brands right now, you know, it only makes sense to look at innovation, technology specifically, and that emergence of technology, and really pay attention to that. So working with other agencies and working with brands to really identify the best way to reach the consumer and to really ignite the experience so that there is brand loyalty. And today, kind of my point of view will be positioned around that. How do we develop campaigns and understand the data behind the consumer to really engage with them in the best way, specifically in the healthcare space. So.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Alden. I'm with the Palo Alto Prize. It is a 3-year bioscience competition with a $1 million incentive prize to challenge scientists to hack the aging code. Specifically, we'd like them to restore homeostatic capacity, which is what we think you lose around the age of 40 when your body can't retune and rebalance the way it does when you're a kid. And we think that the body is the best. We have the best healthcare system, and it is your own body. And we're challenging scientists from all around the world to prolong health span.
Hi, my name is Steve Lieber. I'm CEO of grandparents.com. We are the second most important senior site after AARP. Our focus now is really on health and wellness, rebuilding our site so that we can really support the seniors in this space. We've created 13 specials with PBS just now, and with Jane Seymour as our host, we'll be doing another 13, which will be streaming. We'll also be streaming research projects from major universities such as Harvard and Dana-Farber with all their content. Cleveland Clinic is one of our partners, as well as USC, and many, many others that are joining our mission to really educate seniors about their health and wellness. We also created something called a cash wallet. It'll be the first of its kind. It's a universal debit card. What I mean by that, it's a MasterCard that actually puts rebates back into your pocket from major pharmaceutical companies who are working with us to make sure that seniors are able to take their meds properly. We'll know all about what they're doing because they want to receive these rebates. The rebates will not only come from major pharmaceutical companies, but from companies all over the world that are interested, like AT&T and Verizon and others who want to give the consumer back rebates. We'll make sure those rebates are received by the seniors who have the most amount of issues filling out those forms. You've all been there at Best Buy and other places, and that's called breakage. We stop breakage. We eliminate breakage by giving you an instant rebate. We're in 66,000 drugstores already with our technology. We're partners with Opus Health and Vantif and MasterCard, and we will be able to give you a rebate within 3 seconds. So we're doing it right now in the 66,000 drugstores, but we'll be in many other retailers throughout the world. starting in the United States. So that's what we're really doing to make sure that seniors are protected. We'll know whether or not they're taking their meds, because we'll know whether or not they picked up their rebate. So this is very important for we feel, the future of health and wellness of the senior market. And grandparents.com wants to do everything within our power without being lobbyists to really make sure that seniors are healthy. And that's our mission.
Hi, I'm Jack Kreindler. I have two lives, one of which is as a physician in London. I'm actually a specialist in high altitude medicine, so if any of you want to climb Everest, you come and see me. But I've been working in the area of elite sports science and physiology and extreme conditions medicine for the last 17 years, and realized that there was a considerable change, a revolution, in fact, in connected devices, wearable biosensors, and a lot of the kind of stuff which the media content providers are now using to make big changes in people's health and wellness. This kind of started about 3 years ago, and I started a venture out here in California called Centrion. And Centrion is squarely aimed at taking the revolution in biosensors and the advances that we're making in machine intelligence to be able to help large organizations that look after the needs of the sickest people in our healthcare systems. That's the people with complex chronic disease, people with congestive heart failure, chronic lung disease, complex diabetes, musculoskeletal disorders, and cancer, and to make sure that they stay healthier and happier at home. The way we do that is by fusing the data streams from these biosensors, which today have become complete commodity. In my institute in London, this stuff a few years ago cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now you can pick them up from Target for, 10 to $100. And fusing together these signals and delivering to healthcare providers, disease management organizations, which have trained clinicians who can't really cope with tons of information, and help to triage automatically using machine learning who are the people that are going to get sick many, many days in advance. It may sound like all the back office stuff. It doesn't sound really digital Hollywood, and I get that. I think I'm the ectopic amongst everybody here. But what we are doing does link up very closely. We are personalizing effectively what it is that we can deliver in terms of information to loved ones, caregivers, and the patients themselves. We don't provide the content, but we are able to say what is working and what isn't working to the people that provide content, and then deliver it to the patient and those who are looking after them at home. And that is something which obviously we've been doing a lot in the worlds of advertising, etc., for a long while, but medicine is astonishingly bad at it. And so by looking at the kinds of things that are going on in your homes, going on in your bodies, and helping deliver personalized content, we hope that we can make a profound difference to the number of days that people spend in hospital.
Yeah. This was just to give a follow-up story. My father-in-law had a heart condition, and they sent him home with a blood pressure tool that I had to come over, blood pressure monitor that actually was automatically hooked itself up to the local area network at his house, and was automatically 3 times a day sending his stats back to the doctor's office. And it was, I came over because I was all ready to get it all plugged in, and it automatically recognized the network and didn't even need me. Old tech is dying hard with the new face of medicine. So it's very interesting. All right, so we're going to kick this off. Jennifer, you seem to be an interesting sort of approaching both the medical side and everything, the idea of being able to hack this aging code, sort of the, how do you wrangle all these scientists from all over the world to compete for your prize? You've created this media team to help advertise the prize, to highlight these different labs. Why is that? Why are you doing media to showcase what we just think would be lab work?
So at the Palo Alto Prize, we view scientists as real-life superheroes. And we have 35 teams from all over the world: Israel, India, Japan, England, Stanford, MIT, competing. And the thrilling thing is they're coming at this prize from a range of different angles, looking at telomeres, stem cells, visceral fat, neuromodulation, oxytocin, hormones, circadian rhythms. And they all think they have a shot at this, which is totally thrilling. But at the same time, they don't have much funding. You know, the government, NIH, is great at doing what they can do, but there's not a lot of money for these moonshot problems like solving aging. And we really want to shine a spotlight on the great work that scientists are doing to help them attract the funding that they need. Now, we're dangling $1 million prize. Dr. Jun Yoon is sponsoring everything out of pocket. It's ironic because he's the president of Palo Alto Investors, which is a $2 billion hedge fund that invests in healthcare. And he would like to put himself out of business and put the healthcare system into our own bodies with this prize. I'll just share personally why I'm so profoundly grateful to scientists. 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and I happened to find the one doctor in this world who pioneered brain mapping technique, which saved my ability to speak. The tumor was in my verbal logic and comprehension, and he saved my ability to speak and remove the whole tumor very cleanly. And I was only supposed to have 10 years left to live, and it was going to be a gnarly 10 years. And he got the whole thing out, preserved my ability to speak, comprehend language. And then if you can imagine being diagnosed with a brain tumor, that can derail your life plans a little bit. And I wondered, gosh, all I ever wanted was to be a mom and have kids. And is that going to happen now? And with another miracle of science, I was able to recently freeze my eggs and found out I have 4 embryos on ice. And with genetics, I'm going to find out this week if they're boys or girls. Or so it's very exciting. So from brain tumor to hopes of a future family, I'm profoundly grateful for scientists. And thank you. And that's just me. I'm just one story. I know everyone in this room probably has a story. And at the Palo Alto Prize, we really view what we're doing as a race against time. If you look at the AIDS epidemic, look at Freddie Mercury, lead singer Queen. He was diagnosed with HIV, AIDS in 1987. Just a few years later, Magic Johnson was diagnosed with AIDS. Freddie Mercury didn't make it, and Magic Johnson did. And that was thanks to the scientists who came up with the right cocktail medicines to save Magic Johnson's life and make AIDS a livable disease. So we know that reality stars and athletes get all the fame, fortune, and attention, but we hope that by shining a spotlight on our scientists, we can generate some funding for them. I can't promise these videos will be as salacious as Kim Kardashian's sex video, but we hope the topic of longevity and making all of our lives a healthier, better one will interest some people here. Thank you.
Any follow-up questions or comments from the?
I think we should do a PBS special on that.
Yeah, why not?
We should
Anyone
dismiss
here
the
from
panel
PBS?
right now after that
Me.
story. You should have ended it with that.
Yeah, that
would be,
was-
you know.
I would love to do that.
I said we should do a PBS special on that subject matter. I think it's great. I think the world should know about it.
I agree. Let's do it.
All right.
Well, if some-
Just made progress happen today. That's right.
We're doing 13 new ones, so that sounds like a good one to me.
Wonderful. I look forward to doing it.
All right.
There
All
we
right.
go.
Amanda, we're going to go next. Affleck, what are the benefits and best strategic approaches to evaluating? You talked about the data behind the millennials. When evaluating solutions, your notes, our conversation was around augmented reality to increase consumer engagement.
So yeah, this is it's an interesting twist. You know, I love hearing about all the different means, the different platforms, and how we can bring to light the just all of the great stories around healthcare. And what we found is that when you obviously know your audience and can engage with them in a very real and just pure way, they're much more responsive to that. So all the information that we're trying to push out to consumers and the experience that we're trying to create has to be something that they're willing to hear, right? And so what we have found is that through innovative technologies like augmented reality, and just by a show of hands, who is familiar with what augmented reality is. So there's kind of a mixed crowd. Augmented reality, just as an overview, is essentially taking a mobile device via an app and bringing to life content that may be viewed via print. I mean, it could be a label, it could be a physical object, and then tying that back to some type of online or cloud-based content. And so the way that we've done this is to drive content marketing and drive engagement through video, through social engagement, and have seen great successes. And when you consider millennials representing in the United States, anyway, 25% of the population, there's some 81 million millennials, and that number is only going to continue to grow. It's a real focus and a real relevant need for brands and healthcare systems, physicians, scientists, advertising in general to really pay attention to that. And so there are a lot of considerations in terms of strategy. How do you incorporate augmented reality and other media platforms into your marketing strategy? And my experience and definitely the experience with brands, not just Aflac, Communicorp works with other brands, Ritz-Carlton, IHG, Porsche Cars North America, several hospital systems within the Southeast region. We found that if you have a target segment of millennials or even Gen X, they're most likely going to be paying attention to things that are going to push relevant information to them, where you're personalizing the message and giving them something worth their time. And so instead of trying to figure out a way to use augmented reality, my approach has always been instead figure out where augmented reality fits within your strategy. So from a healthcare standpoint, if you're trying to improve patient experience at a hospital system, where are those touch points along the customer journey that makes sense? Don't force it, but figure out where it makes sense. And in the same respect, creative agencies will find the right touch points within their advertising campaign to do the same thing.
Thank you.
Any questions to that, panel members?
What we do is because we have mass reach to consumers, and around 31 any given month, 30 to 35% of our audience is millennials. So we have a group within the company. It's really one person. Shouldn't call it a group, but they're cross-functional teams, and they incubate new technologies that can be infused into our programming to enhance the educational experience and enhance the viewing experience. And some of them are very simple. If you look at our Hit This program, we've infused technology graphical overlays on the fitness instruction to show form when you're exercising. And AR is one of the things that we're looking at in the mobile environment, especially the registered environment around some of these activities around it. But there is a lot of cool new technology that's coming out where you're infusing video and technology. And the issue you have right now is, and I haven't seen any companies really doing it the way we're doing it, because we originate and we produce all of our own programming in-house, and our engineering team builds all of our technology. The thing that I have to figure out is how we partner outside of that. And we've been very focused as a startup to just do that. So I'd love to get together with you and see how we can do something together.
Making more progress happen.
There we go.
Very
Making great
good.
work here.
I was just going to say, what I find kind of interesting about that is, you know, medicine moves really, really slowly. I mean, how long does it actually take for a piece of research to become practice? And actually, here's an interesting thought. Of that research that is done, you know, that sort of proves that this next new thing that you're doing to help a patient actually works, how many of those research studies are actually reproducible in the real world? What percentage do you think of medical evidence actually works? Guesses?
30%. Less than one.
It's less than half.
Yeah.
So less than half of medicine, in terms of what we know works, actually works. That's because when you do a trial, it's done in a very controlled way. And what we're doing with things like, you know, real live whether it's assessing someone's response to video content or augmented reality, or something that they're browsing, is you're actually getting a real-time feedback loop. And we don't do that in medicine. We wait for many, many years before we actually find out what is really working in the real world for people and,
Right.
And what's not.
I think it's actually an interesting point when you're getting into the data, right? Because if you following technology and marketing, or everybody's talking about big data and analyzing data. What the new platforms that we're talking about, and you start talking about it, about the trackers, devices, both biological and non-biological, they started transmitting data. And that data, and you talked about, I think your dad, that he actually transmits his blood pressure 3 times a day. But what about if he transmits it constantly? Right? And or your blood pressure or your breathing habits or your heart rates, constant transmission of that. And whenever there's a blip, raise the flag. So how many of you have American Express in your wallet?
I don't leave home without it.
Bring it over for a second. I'm just kidding. But whenever you are making a weird purchase, there's a blip and you get a call, right? Weird purchase online, you went overseas and all of a sudden you made a purchase, they'll either block it or actually give you a call. Same should go because they have the data. They know your habits, you know your normal expense habits, and whenever there's an abnormal, you get a call. And it's constant monitoring of your information. So that's when I see analyzing the data and the feeds from all of your, from the watch, from the whatever, from the pill that you swallow, right? That's why I see the progress in overall medicine, because that's when you really can test the drugs and the impacts on a 24/7 basis, and not, seeing the doctor for 5 minutes and he's checking up.
I'm going to do a follow-up, just sort of in that, from your a little bit more of a creative agency side of things. How do you see the method that you start applying innovation for sort of allowing creativity, innovation, along with data and privacy issues? What's sort of your agency view, and how does it all merge together in your future, or what you see? It
doesn't merge very well because it's a hard things to merge, because the healthcare, it's very regulatory, same as insurance. So when you try to pass a new, and we are telling stories. We're telling stories about a brand, about a drug, about a disease. We're trying to tell a story. And when you try to merge the story within the regulatory world, right, there's a conflict there. You can make that claim about the drug or about the company. You can do that. You can do that. And so you have an amazing idea. By the time it's past the regulatory of that company, it's watered down to the point that you don't really recognize the original story that you're trying to tell. So as a creative company within that healthcare environment, both to consumers and to doctors or healthcare, we're trying to build a bridge between the regulatory world and the creative work in order to be effective, in order to tell the story, in order to explain the disease, the impact of the drug, the risk of the drug, and not just like the dry, at the end of each healthcare commercial that, 15 seconds is the commercial and then 25 seconds is the disclaimers that what's happening if. And we try to do it in different ways. And one of the way that we learn to do it is actually working with the regulatory team as part of the creative process, bring them much earlier in the process, instead of like doing the creative work, coming up with a great idea, vet it, test it, and then go to the regulators like, you can't do that. Get that, and then go back to the drawing board. So what we try to do is really bring them in to the incubation part of the creative, to the idea, and get them a buy-in and get them part of the process and let them find a way to tell the story. So that's one of the way we're dealing with in that regulatory world. A lot of it is even harder because of the new technology. So they don't even know what's allowed and what's not, right? What is that? What does that mean to do it via, is streaming a video via a mobile device is different than TV, different than an online, any other online device. So we try to solve the problems with them and figure it out. No pharmaceutical company wants to get sued, by the FDA. It's a very expensive process. So whatever they believe that the FDA wants, they multiply it. They're kind of like being conservative about what they allowed and what they're not allowed to say. So this is the day-to-day struggle to keep creativity and innovation within that field.
I'd like to follow up to that. The struggle is real. And I think
Thank you
not,
for
yeah,
saying
I
that
feel
I'm
ya.
not lying to the audience.
The very similar, like almost parallel experience within the insurance world. Obviously, healthcare marketers, advertisers are typically pretty conservative for the purposes of regulatory controls. And AFLAC had recently launched an advertising campaign. Well, to me, it's not a campaign. It's just the way that we do things. And it's one day pay, which essentially says that you can utilize technology to upload your claim, submit it, and the very same or next day you get your claim paid. And that's based on some of those stipulations as to whether you upload it by 3 p.m. and all that good stuff. But anyway, we found that bringing in compliance, legal, and all of even Department of Insurance, and having that collaborative approach up front, even at the very, very onset of the campaign development, had helped us tremendously to be able to launch everything from social to, of course, online website, TV, direct mail. I mean, there was a huge effort to launch the integrated campaign successfully without any fines from the Department of Insurance, without any backlash from policyholders who didn't feel like what we were saying was credible and true. The fact was, we were doing it, and we had been doing it as a market leader in our space for years, far beyond any one of our competitors, but we never really advertised it because of the fact that there is a little bit of angst, I guess, around marketing healthcare consumers, whether it be in traditional insurance exchange or what have you. But I think that this is the time for us to now kind of break that mold and cross the chasm so that we can deliver to consumers, to physicians, to the pharmaceutical companies, a way that really gets the message out, engages consumers using technology, but not have to worry so much about the regulatory aspect of it if we're smart and strategic and have forethought.
Just to give you an example, when you're looking at pharmaceutical commercials, right, which is the easy part, you always see people on bicycles, basically, for 15 seconds, or a version of a bicycle. You never see them take the product. So when you see a Coke commercial, you see them take the product.
Right.
So it's a very hard, regulatory world that we can't show people actually taking the product, right? So you're trying to tell a different story through a storytelling. And then when you're going into the social network, right, it's not a conversation. You're not allowed to ask or answer questions online because it just, you're going to make a claim. So that's becoming a very, very hard, way for us to actually do get onto the social networks without, making those claims or breaking those claims.
Yeah. We have most of our advertisers in the public environment are pharmaceutical insurance companies, and it's real. And I'll tell you, I grew up in the technology space, and it really started the health and wellness part of it in this company in January of 2014. And I went to my first Digital Pharma East was the conference. And I'm telling you, I felt like I was back in 1990s when I was launching Sony's direct e-commerce business. It's really just archaic and how far behind they are from a technology standpoint. And it's not because the pharmaceutical companies are not innovative. It's just the rules and regulations that they have to follow are really stringent. And I'll give you an example. At that conference, I was, is this really 2014? Where they were saying, what is Twitter? And basically said, yeah, you could use Twitter if you can get your message across and all the disclosures in 140 characters.
Good luck
And this
with
is
that.
the government, doing a presentation to the pharmaceutical advertisers. And I was next to one of the executives from a pharmaceutical company. And I'm like, man, you've selected a really difficult industry to market in. And for us, it's easier because we maintain editorial independence. No advertisers tell us what our content is going to be about. So really all they're buying from us is contextual relevance and audience. And I even want to try to eliminate advertising across our entire environment because it does not enhance the user experience.
Have a quick follow-up?
Yeah, right now when we're taking on our site, you'll see we include the commercials that you see on television because we're video only. So it's pre-roll in the industry, it's called, and it's an advertisement that's comes up before you see the content that you're looking for. It's unfortunate that we have to put a 1:30 advertisement in front of a 5-minute video. No, because it's independent editorial. We have URAC accreditation on our independent editorial that just says that every one of our videos is reviewed by 2 medical directors.
Yeah, it's kind of like branded content and non-branded content, right? So if Pfizer content is for a specific drug for Pfizer, then you have to put all the disclaimers. If it's not branded, you can actually talk about the disease and the impacts and not about the drug. Then you don't have to put disclaimers.
Steve, I was going to go to you just as a follow-up, but in your media business, sort of how does this innovation of video, social, and communication, health and wellness, anything you're noticing at grandparents.com?
Yeah, well, what we find is that the consumer really wants information, and we are going to put them together in a social network so they can talk to each other. So, for instance, if men who have prostate cancer want to talk to each other, or women who have breast cancer. Other sites have done this, but we're going to focus on the senior network that we've created. And we find communication between various consumers is really important in terms of finding out, what kind of meds am I taking? How many days a week am I taking it? What works? What doesn't work? What the problem with many pharmaceutical studies that we've come across is that it works for some consumers, doesn't work for others. Certain drugs work better for other folks. When we did our specials, it was amazing. Everybody, the drug companies are forced to go up against generic drugs. One of the problems that doctors related to us is that a lot of these generic drugs don't work as well as the major pharmaceutical brands. But basically, the doctors have no way of really communicating that to both their patients and to the consumer. We will make sure that those, communications goes out to our consumer group. So we are really establishing a network of consumers who are concerned about their health, who want to live longer. We're not about retired people, we're about active. So we're the American Grandparents Association of active people. And they really want to stay active the rest of their lives, and health is probably the most important focus. And they're the wealthiest people really in this country, so they can afford the drugs, but they don't even know sometimes what drugs to really take, what really works for them. So we're forming our own, forums within grandparents.com so that they educate each other. And you really find that works, because now that we've, produced these 13 specials, all with different major doctors who are superstars, and I agree with you, that's one of the missing links. What the problem with many doctors is they can't get published. They do the research and they can't even get it published. One of the things we're doing is streaming research projects. So in other words, we go to Dana-Farber. Dana-Farber releases its latest information. We tape it and stream it, so that now we know what the greatest new kinds of research that Dana-Farber is doing at Harvard on cancer is now known to the rest of the world. One of the big problems with the consumer is they're not educated. They really don't know what is available. What can they get? My wife had multiple myeloma for 5 years. I became almost like a scientist on multiple myeloma, knowing, MD Anderson to Arkansas to Dana-Farber and all over the world, trying to figure out, how do I get her to live longer? What kind of medicines? And it was really a concoction of pills that she wound up taking, a concoction of medicines that they put together, similar, I'm sure, to many cases. So it's a real problem out there. Consumer education is really what we focus on, and research, getting the doctors out there in front of the public so they can really express what they're doing. And maybe Dana-Farber is the right place for you, but maybe it's USC, other kinds of institutions. So we partner with Cleveland Clinic, Mayo, and all the major, hospital organizations who really can't, they want to give their information to an insurance carrier, but they really can't because, they're all partnered with each other. Yeah. They put together a lot of the research and they're competitive. And the problem is there should be no competition in medicine, but there is.
Yeah,
so sometimes, what's best for the consumer is not necessarily what's best for the institution. It's not best for getting grants and research. And, it's a horrible thing to expose, but truthfully, our system provides a lot of great medicines, but a lot of reasons why they could work a lot better together in creating new meds rather than, competing with each other.
And I totally agree. I think sites like yours and information like you putting out there actually change the entire marketing strategy for drug companies or healthcare providers, because 15 years ago, 10 years ago, when you diagnosed with something, whatever it was, you went to the doctor, they gave you the information. Your research was maybe go and get a second opinion, a third opinion if you're lucky, and then make a decision. Today, before you even go to the doctor, you do a research about the doctor, right? And then he's going to give you some information about, diagnose you with something. You got to you'll become a scientist in that condition, which even if it's a small cut can be very, very scary if you're doing a serious research. And then you go and get a second opinion. So the research and the information is out there change.
Access to science, that's cool. If it's good science, it's great. We already know that half of it's not great, but at least having access to half
You're
of
being
it's
generous
great.
with half, right?
So, but the other thing is that a lot of people that want to market stuff that doesn't work or things that they believe work that doesn't work are taking this ability that we've got now as consumers, as purchasers of healthcare, rather than kind of people that just get prescribed stuff, and they're taking advantage of that and taking advantage of us. So it's a double-edged sword. I heard a great talk in London a couple of days ago. You might have heard of Wired magazine. Wired magazine is in the US, yeah. So Wired Health is a kind of a cool TED-style conference, and there was a brilliant professor of neuroscience who was talking there. Called Professor Blakemore, and she was talking about this very interesting phenomenon. I'm not going to talk about the product because the name, I think in this country I'm going to get sued so badly if I say it, but I could say it in the UK. But it is a system that helps people to improve their cognitive function, specifically kids who've got like learning difficulties and stuff like that. And have any of you guys heard of like left brain, right brain stuff?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so who here knows what the right brain's good for? Huh?
Creative.
Yeah, and the right brain? Yeah, that's right. So how many people know all that stuff and heard about all this? A lot of you? Okay, it's complete nonsense. Okay, yet, you have all been sold this, am I allowed to say the word that begins with S? Shit. It's shit. There is absolutely no difference between the left and the right brain, except for a few microseconds before you get the crossover. There's a massive thing in the middle of your brain called the corpus callosum, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have it, you're going to be weird. you're left in your and you might get a tiny microsecond of activity in the right brain for some things or in the left brain for others. But essentially, your left and your right brain work exactly the same. They communicate with each other, right? But this is a demonstration of how almost completely bad science has been latched upon by people who are making claims who are outside of the FDA approvals, okay? And pretty well everyone in this room, I hope I've just debunked a myth, okay? But you were convinced, okay? Now, I'm not saying this company even knows what it's talking about. I think it doesn't even know that it is propagating bad science. And that's another thing we've got to remember, is that we are in a very, very powerful position. We are, with the abilities we have in the internet and communication and media, we can do mass vaccination campaigns like that, if you like. But are those vaccines any good? It's a really important point that we've got to, we as people, well, not me, I said I'm the ectopic, I'm just like the deep learning guy doing weird stuff in the background. But it's your responsibility, I think, to also make sure that those super docs and everything are not accidentally allowing commercial organizations to do bad medicine.
Yeah, the interesting thing on this topic, the good news is you have access to all this information. The bad news is you have access to all this information. Before I restarted Healthy Nation, I did extensive research and had the team doing some research on this, my investment team. And basically there's an interesting thing that we noticed. And both points are absolutely right. The average reading age of the US population is 6th to 7th grade level. So when they're reading stuff on Everyday Health and WebMD, it's all accurate medical information, but it's way too complex. So they start self-diagnosing themselves, a lot of the population. And they have a pain in their chest that could be a pinch, in their shoulder that could be a pinched nerve. And then it starts migrating up to their jaw and they think they're having a heart attack. And doctors are seeing this in their offices. So when the reason why we started a video-only company is, what's the best mechanism to speak to those folks? At that, everything we do is on a 6th to 7th grade reading level, and you're talking to a doctor about the condition. You're not reading about it. The doctor's explaining it to you in the video. And it's a really interesting thing because some folks can leverage all this access and handle it very well as they take personal control of their health, and others, it puts such stress on them that it actually, it hurts them. So we do have a big responsibility here to make sure we're getting it right, to make sure all the content's medically approved and medically reviewed. And you know, there's a big debate about Dr. Oz in this country right now going on is he stepping over the line? And we all probably have opinions on it in varying ways, but this is part of that problem as well that we have to do. So we do have a responsibility. I agree with you. And it's good news and bad news. It's how you use the data.
I know you use videos, but I was thinking about telemed. And telemed, I know a lot of companies that have come to us and want to use telemedicine. It really, in every single field, how will that affect your videos? Because this is instantaneous gratification versus waiting for the video to come out and using the Netflix approach to medicine. You know, it seems to me that that we're going and heading toward every major insurance company and others wanting to put you, I know I'm working with AT&T on something like this, and it's, you know, digital medicine is here.
Yeah, I agree.
So what do you do about your...
Well, our mission is not to be the MDs from a video. It's just to help people understand and educate them a little bit more and then get them moving and eating well and being able to ask the right questions to their doctor.
Yeah.
Let me ask a follow-up question because I haven't had a chance for you to talk more about how do you innovate around video, especially when it can be across so many different devices? Is there a certain style guide? How are you really...
You have to have great developers and engineers. Okay. It's really hard. I'll tell you some, I'll take it off of health a little bit here and bring you into a little bit of technology. You know, when you're starting something that doesn't exist, it's really, really hard and you got to stay focused and you end up with, peaks and troughs of emotion, because so we're like, great, all video, mobile first. And then if you look at condition level searches, there is no brand loyalty to when the brand is Google, actually. If you're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, you go to Google and you type in type 2 diabetes and you look at everyone who has credible information there. So that was a brand opportunity for us, right? It's an opportunity where WebMD owns that, Everyday Health owns that. Over 80% of their traffic comes from search engine optimization. So we're building this video only site. Google's algorithms ranking video higher. But the reality of Google was built in a text-based world, and their algorithms are text-based, and we had no text on our site, so we weren't getting picked up, even though they were ranking videos higher. So we had to figure out ways to infuse text into our site at the program level, not the page level. That's one example, and we did it with transcripts, with recipes on our food programming, and we've had to infuse it. It's killing me because I want it to be only video.
And now you're changing it because it changed algorithm?
Well, actually, those algorithm changes are really good for us. But
Is it it's putting you higher in the
so now you're starting to see us get picked up a little bit higher, and we're mobile friendly. That algorithm is really, our whole site's mobile friendly. But the other part of this was monetization. When you start looking at Google with DFP and you do ad serving with DFP, it's built in a web page environment, and we built a user interface that would load the page once and you'd have your entire video playlist. So it sort of worked like Netflix in a public environment. We could only serve one ad and someone might watch 20 videos. So we had to figure out a technology workarounds to keep the user experience where it is without having to load a page for every video, which would have been a horrible user experience. So these are some of the technology hurdles, to answer your question, of when you're innovating. Now, when you talk about getting to the product of health and wellness, we just did the first video drug treatment guide. There's nothing in the industry that talks about a condition and then every drug available for it. So we have pharmacy, our medical directors and pharmaceutical and a pharmacist talk about how you take the drug, what the benefits of the drug are, and it compares the drugs for each condition. That's a unique product that's really helping consumers and has taken off for us.
Let me say, just from a personal standpoint, I wish I knew that about 18 months ago that you had that. My son has epilepsy. And when he was first diagnosed with seizures, I didn't know anything about seizures. Like I've heard of grand mal, and I was kind of like, okay, well, that's not what it is. It's partial complex frontal lobe seizures. So basically, a spark ignites in the frontal lobe, and it kind of like a ping pong machine. No, what's the machine that you pinball? Thank you. Gosh, it's been too long. Basically there's a shock that goes through his brain, and it progressed over about 6 months. And the hope that I had with just a great pediatric neurologist was that they would be able to find out what type of seizure, because with epilepsy, the diagnosis is key to the treatment, like so many other conditions. And so it took us well over 8 months to find out what type of medication would be appropriate. And to be honest, it was through self-education and figuring out all of the different options. And we tried 5 different medications, and that's with weaning on and weaning off of those medications over this period of time to figure out what was right. And none of them were working. And it wasn't until I went through that long, long list of hundreds and hundreds of different types of medication for what I found to be his diagnosis that I had suggested to the doctor, why not try Tryliptal? It hadn't been used in years very regularly because all of the new medications were being pushed by the pharmaceutical companies. And it worked. It was a little bit emotional here. Within 1 day, his seizures went from 25 a night to 10. And then within 1 week, he was seizure free. It's an amazing thing. Thank you. But it's technology. It was internet. It was self-education.
But why haven't we captured that?
I don't know.
So here's the thing. That
It's
is
amazing.
that's a real world example of something where you've tried something, it hasn't worked. You know, and there will be many people with the same particular type of genetics as your child, the same physiology as your child, the same kind of electrical distribution of whatever it is that's going on in whichever lobe. We don't capture it,
Yeah.
and we don't feed back. I mean, you know, if it took us years to adjust the flaps on an airplane as it was wobbling through the sky, they'd all crash.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we lose it. In fact, actually, there's one area, it's kind of the opposite of yours, Steve, which is in pediatrics, which in pediatric cancer has been quite profound. And that is that pretty well every single kid that's put on a cancer drug is on a trial. They always feed back, and every single individual kid's results, according to what cancer they had, the histology, the stage, the, you know, and exactly what their outcomes were from which combination of chemo, even before doing deep genetics and stuff, has helped improve outcomes for kids' cancers from, I don't know if the stats are exactly right, but survival rates of something like 20%, 25% to 80, 85% in kids, because we're doing real-time learning.
Right.
Okay, and it comes back to what, you know, Jenny, Palo Alto Prize, this sort of research is doing, is that we're now getting to a point where you can do your research as a real clinical thing. You'll be able to help. There'll be lots and lots of people way before it becomes a, you know, a sort of an approved drug from a big drug company that will be benefiting maybe from some of the innovators that the Palo Alto Prize is going to be working on. In kids, we've been doing it really well, at least in oncology. We haven't been doing it in aging. We haven't been doing it in, I mean, epilepsy is not so cool. It's like, oh, you got epilepsy. Okay. No,
Right.
that's all right.
No, and
You got cancer. Oh, that's a serious, you know,
Right.
it's both very serious. More kids die of epilepsy than
Yes.
die of cancer, right? That's a stat. All right.
it's very
But
true.
but we do capture it. So
We
don't.
capture it, we just don't use it.
Well,
We do have
did
what?
you? So let me ask you a question. As a mother, did you go to the bulletin boards and post your findings?
Yeah, and
And
well,
so
It doesn't
no,
get
no,
absorbed.
no, no, but
It
it
does
is
not get absorbed.
no, but it is important because another mother like Amanda,
Right.
you know, with the kids will do the research and she will run into Amanda post about what she did. So there are two different levels. I understand what you're saying, that there's the academic, right? And there's the social.
the social aspect.
So from time to time, people stop posting their cats video stuff, and I'm using the S word, stuff, online, and they post actually something that is relevant and is important, and they're learning the findings. So our rating system, our feedback system is captured. So the next
Yeah.
mother, because
I mean, there's patients like me
Amanda,
and stuff like that which quantify it, but we're still
Right.
appallingly bad at actually getting. And the more that we feed back on individual anecdotes, the more there is. Oh, I'm going to try this. And by the way,
I
when you
agree.
try that on my
I agree.
kid with
Right.
epilepsy, they die.
Right. So that
Okay.
and that's really key, because my story, my personal experience is it's personal, right? It's individual to my son, and I did share via social forums, the experience and the journey, and it was amazing the amount of support that from my own community came out to say, oh wow, we're seeing the same thing. Like all of my
Right.
my church groups, kids in Bible study, like there's a huge number of them. Like, why is it all of a sudden that all these children are coming up with epilepsy? And there's many reasons, and you can go to CDC and you can go to all the other websites and do the research on what could be the contributing factor. We did every test possible, and there is no underlying cause. And so they chalk it up to just abnormality. He may grow out of it. We pray that he does. But it's dangerous for me to put that out there and say, this is what happened to my child, and this is how it was treated. And then another mother think, oh, well, then that can work for me too. So it has to be balanced with the medical
Of course.
field, obviously, but all of the EEGs, I mean, I went through an 8-hour EEG, and I don't know if any of you have ever experienced that, but with a 2-year-old with a ton of wires for 8 hours trying to keep him sleep deprived, to force him to have seizures, is just an overwhelming experience that I would not wish upon anyone. but the data that we got from that and the the underlying research that could then be done can be shared with others in the medical community and hopefully one day used as a case study so that anyone else that has that same makeup as Trevor can actually have less of a time, to be treated. So,
yeah, that's a great micro example on how social had formed this. Doctor, how do you see with chronic disease, sort of big issue, how are the institutions addressing that? I think that's one thing you're doing with your company about how to use technology innovations to tune the outcomes of chronic disease patients. How is
Which institutions? The big.
I'm just talking about formal medicine versus ad hoc message boards.
Sure.
Trying to bring it back to.
Well, I think it's a case of combining it. So, you can have all these fancy biosensors bringing all these wonderful signals in, which supposedly are real objective measures of your heart or your breathing or your stress or your sleep level or whatever. But at the end of the day, one of the most brilliant biosensors is the loved ones and caregivers around you telling you, that you're doing well or you're looking pale or you don't look very well today. There's an interesting statistic actually around meningitis for kids. It's an interesting one. It's not chronic disease, but what is the most sensitive test and the most specific test for meningitis in kids? Early warning biomarker for meningitis in kids.
Stiff neck.
Huh?
Stiff neck.
Fever.
It's a mother saying, I think my kid's got meningitis. Okay. So even in very sort of serious and acute stuff, more so in chronic, the input of the loved ones and caregivers is actually incredibly important. And actually in what we're doing, we're quite lucky because we've got a software framework that allows the inputs, the sort of those qualitative hunches, right, from the loved ones and caregivers to actually be part of the data streams that are coming in. You might have heart rate variability, breathing rate, oxygen sats, etc. But dad's not looking so great is actually a data stream. And we treat that like a data stream. It's noisier, it goes up and down. But the point is we build kind of an understanding of what is the norm and what is the vector of change for that individual based on the inputs of the loved ones and caregivers around. So we're lucky. We're actually in a real kind of, I say, regulated medical framework. We're actually getting this kind of non-regulated, this thing really worked for me, this thing didn't, into the algorithms at the moment. And I think that's where we all need to go in all areas of health, whether it's prevention, chronic disease management, stuff that's not as serious as what we're doing in terms of how many days you go into hospital every year. But it is taking those outcomes and treating those human observational outcomes as a real data stream in healthcare.
I think the pharmaceutical actually recognize the caregiver as such, not
It's
to the
meant to.
extent because they are trying, because they know that, if you're looking at, taking the drugs on time, consistent taking the drugs and stuff like that, we know that a lot of the time is the caregivers are the one who control it and monitor it and making sure that, so all those apps or reminders and stuff like that are targeted sometimes to the patient themselves, but a lot of the time target to the caregivers to give them both on support, to support them, to recognize them, and give them tools to help with the situation, whatever the situation is.
It's funny, we're doing PBS special on caregivers.
Yeah, it's
And we feel it's really an important issue. As a matter of fact, we're doing an HSN, we're doing 20 hours on HSN, and the first featured group is on caregivers, and really reaching out to mostly women who really are the foremost experts on caregiving and know how to do it well. And all of these issues have been brought up by our doctors, and they really feel it's important. And our insurance carrier happens to be Aetna, and Aetna's supporting this, and they're paying for it.
Steve, does your website provide kind of a caregiver log of any sort?
We're going to have a whole caregiver section.
Yep.
For mothers just like you, who can, at least tell folks about the experience. So grandmothers know about it. They really care the most, have the most amount of time to really, focus. And they're the ones who usually support the mothers and
Right.
grandchildren.
But and I guess specifically, like what I'm thinking is something that more so would give, how is the patient feeling today? How is your mom feeling today? And instead of free text form, but being able to rate frowny face, smiley
Yes,
face
yeah,
on a
you're right.
rating of one, so that you can take that data and it can be built into.
I'm not writing the program, but it's a good idea.
Yeah,
I like it.
there's some ideas I have.
Yeah,
I can
no, I'd
definitely
love
chat
to
with you.
It's amazing. You learn a lot here.
I hope
Smiley
y'all are
face.
getting as much benefit as we are.
I like to hang out with young people.
There you go. Speaking of smiley faces, we have some time for questions, so I'll actually start right here in the front.
When my son was 16 last year, and it was what you were talking about, doctor's observations. He kept saying that he kind of had gas, but it was like once a month or maybe twice a month, and I thought it was my cooking. It was just, and I thought, well, he ate something. He's a football player, so maybe he was lifting weights or something, and then it would go away, and every so often, it turned out to be appendicitis, which was so hard to detect, except my college son Googled it. And he said, I think he has appendicitis, and sure enough, he did. And I almost wonder if a child was autistic or something, how much harder that would be to diagnose, because they really can't speak. We couldn't even diagnose it.
Right.
And then so, it's kind of what you're saying. Observations. I knew he had gas or some kind of pain that I heard, and we caught it at the time. But how many people don't, because it's so ambiguous.
What was your question?
I was just agreeing with what, there's really no question, but it just struck home when you said that. I went, oh my God, I would have let it go to my dad cooking for a long time until he burst.
So I think what I'd really like to see is I'd like to see an ICD-10 code, a medical kind of reimbursement code for mum's bad cooking cause of appendicitis, versus one which was grumbly appendicitis that was thought to be mum's cooking but ended up being appendicitis. And I think we need to structure this kind of input better. Free text video is harder, is not as easy as filling in a specific drop-down box or a field, a quantifiable field. But there are ways in which consumer devices, touch screens, and so on can actually quantify things that are more kind of emotional stuff. Like if you're trying to diagnose something going on in your belly, why not have a screen with a picture of your belly and you point to where it's been hurting and you press harder or press a few more times when it's hurting more? This is being able to quantify stuff that otherwise just remains words and becomes an anecdote. And we have billions of anecdotes that are unmineable, unusable. And it's kind of like, hey, what is this? Is this a seriously scientifically based profession, medicine? Or are we still living where actually information is really only passed down, word of mouth from cave paintings, or around campfires where, the elders sort of teach the junior doctors their experiences. I think we really have to use these sort of new communications platforms and media devices, not just to deliver information, but as innovative ways of capturing what is, really just lost today.
Jack, I agree with you 100%. Just to your opinion, who's supposed to capture that? Like, who's supposed to be in control of capturing what you just said?
Who's in control of it?
Who should be? Because obviously no one. Right now, it's a
Ain't
social.
doctors.
Right. Well,
Tell you that.
well, it's not the doctors and it's not the pharmaceutical companies because they're going to be biased.
Why
So
can't
who-
it be the consumer?
It is the
It
But
needs
it
to be
is.
the
That-
consumer.
then that's the
patient loved
social.
ones and caregivers.
But that's the social network that's happening right now. No.
Yeah.
I mean,
And that's the real
So
power
that's
that
what's
we
happening.
discovered today. Is really, it's more and more power is now available to the caregiver, and the caregiver is sort of moving to the forefront or leading the pack versus sort of following what the doctors and the pharmaceuticals are doing. It's an interesting shift.
I think the patient, loved ones,
5
and
more
caregivers,
minutes.
they're actually going to become the researchers.
Yeah, that's what we're
That's
doing.
it.
That's
Right.
exactly
This
what we're
gentleman
doing.
back here.
I have a question, but I wanted to point out to comment on the becoming your own researcher and left brain, right brain, and community bulletin boards. A friend of mine recently looked up some symptoms she was having, and it turned out that she either had something like Lyme disease or something, or distemper. And she's an intelligent person, so she knew it wasn't that. But there is that kind of, ridiculous possibilities. But my question is, for the people working on the preventative, on the wellness side, are you or are these organizations willing to work with other sort of lobbying organizations like the Organic Consumers Association, or to challenge something like the Grocery Manufacturers Association, who are actively working to prevent our right to know on the political level? Is that something, because there's a lot of still pharmaceutical input to everything that you're talking about. They stand to gain, and so I follow the money and question the sources.
Yeah, I think we're outside of, we weren't addressing the political environment on this panel.
Yeah.
And
I can comment on it a little bit
Okay.
because of just my personal reason why I started Healthy Nation is one of them is the food system in the country. And I've done some TED Talks on it as well. I would say we are, but the reason why we're taking a DTC approach, going directly to consumers and trying to educate them, is because the lobbying bodies of these organizations are so strong. And until you get a major consumer movement around it, you're not going to change it. There is so much quantitative empirical data about sweeteners and sugar being the real culprit. And we're out there saying everything's low fat. And I'll tell you a story of a girl.
a quick one.
A quick story. I'll tell you a story of a girl who was watching Healthy Nation videos, and we educated her on sugar. But basically, she was obese. She was 16 years old and couldn't figure out why she couldn't lose weight. And her family didn't know. And basically, just real quick, as soon as she found out that it was sugar, because she's eating cereals every morning that said low fat, thinking that that was good enough, and it was a very high carbohydrate, high sugar diet. And basically, as soon as she started eliminating sugar, she started losing the weight with the exercise that she was doing. So there's such an educational problem and there's such marketing there. We're just trying to just evangelize one video, one person, one community at a time to drive that change. And it's happening with the stuff that's going on organic, and then it becomes everything organic. So you got to watch the organic government logos now because it's not really organic.
Everything's organic.
Right? So if we start doing it one consumer at a time, and the way we change our purchasing behavior, it'll happen. I'm actually looking at partnering with McDonald's to help them become healthier. If we can help McDonald's offer healthy meals and really reposition themselves, as that in itself is going to save millions of lives.
Right.
Good thought.
One last question. This right here.
I think it's a great panel. A lot of good information coming out. I think the answer is you have to be your own best advocate. Steve has a great story of a friend of his who had walking a mile alone was dying, and her husband found the hospital that found the cure for her. She's alive today. So that's great. But Jennifer, I want to ask you a question. I'm really thrilled that you're very healthy today.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
But what did they say about this little instrument against your ear?
You know, my neurosurgeon swears it has nothing to do with that. And I was really suspicious myself because my tumor is right here in my left temporal lobe, exactly where I held my cell phone for 12 years. Because, you know, I type with my right hand, drive with my right hand. So I held it right there. And right now he says jump, I say how high. He's kind of God to me. He's been inside my brain, and I trust and respect him so much. So he really says there is no correlation. Interestingly enough, I just had an experience in New York with a interesting acupuncturist, kind of, I don't want to say witch doctor, but alternative medicine. And I was in a car accident when I was 16, and he cites that, injury to that sent something to my brain, and he connected the dots between that accident to the brain tumor. And what's interesting about that is that they think I've had the tumor since I was 16 or so. So who knows?
Well, micro-inflammatory environments, that promotes tumors. And if you've had trauma, it's not so much witch doctoring, it's good, subtle pattern recognition.
Yes, good. Thank you, Dr. Jack.
Well, I want to thank the panel. Thank you so much for everything. Good luck and good health.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes,
Hey, how are you?
Oh, yes.